On this episode of Candid Conversations with Dr. Kelly, we sit down with Chaandani Khan, a concussion and persistent post-concussion syndrome, or PPCS, survivor, who turned her personal journey into a professional mission. We talk about her long road to recovery, the challenges of navigating life with persistent symptoms, and how she now uses her lived experience to support and advocate for others walking a similar path. Whether you're a survivor, caregiver, or healthcare provider, this conversation is full of insight, empathy, and hope. So without further ado, let's get candid. Welcome to Candid Conversations. We have a very special guest today, Chaandani Khan. She has a very inspirational story about how she experienced a brain injury and how she completely turned it into something positive and beneficial and how she is giving back to the community. So Chaandani, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
So, I am a PPCS strategist. And what that means is that I help people who are working through persistent post-concussive symptoms. I help them reclaim their lives after an injury has derailed them from what they know, what they were doing.
That is phenomenal. And how did you get into this space?
I got into this space by actually being a person who experienced a life derailing concussion. So, 5.5 years ago, coming up to 6 years ago, actually, pretty soon, I was in a car accident and I had a concussion brain injury, as well as a lot of different back and neck injuries that resulted. And, the physical body pieces took a couple of years, but they did resolve a lot easier than the concussion. And that was an incredibly eye-opening experience for me because prior to actually going through this level of life derailment caused by that injury, I didn't realize that concussions could be that long lasting. And what I know now, of course, I wish I knew then. At this point in time, I've ingrained myself in this space. I'm very well versed. I'm educated in the space, and most importantly, I am a lived experience subject matter expert.
And you were able to turn that into an opportunity. You are a PPCS strategist. Could you tell me what that means?
Yeah, so I guess to be able to answer this, I'll take it a couple steps back. So when I had my concussion injury, the just to kind of give some perspective, prior to the injury, I was a very busy person. I always saw myself as very highly capable. There was nothing that I couldn't do, I couldn't learn, I couldn't take on. And this showed up in my life, in the way that I worked 50 to 70 hours a week. I was an active volunteer. I had sports, I had hobbies, I had a very busy social life, and I traveled often. And I thought I was very happy doing that. And that's kind of the life and the lifestyle that I had known for a very long period of time and was very comfortable within. So I went from that type of existence to having an injury that completely put the brakes on every part of my life. And so, on like the specific sort of, if I give some specific examples, I could no longer remember how to make a sandwich. They just, for the life of me, it didn't make sense. I would stand in the kitchen and then I would just cry for as long as I cried for because I was overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start. I couldn't think of how the bread and ingredients would come together to make something that I could eat when I was hungry. And, rippling beyond that, I had that versus, not versus, but that in addition to issues following basic conversations. I couldn't recognize faces if I tried to be on a screen and I tried to watch some kind of a show. I struggled to show up for other people in my life. I've always taken pride in being a very good friend and a good family member and being supportive and being present and being invested and showing up in ways that support other people and make them happy. But I couldn't do that. I was struggling with things like anxiety and depression, and I hadn't ever experienced those before in my life. So, going through such a massive change, of course, this also impacted the fact that I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't volunteer anymore. I had a side hustle I couldn't partake in anymore. I was not my social self. I was not hosting people constantly at my place. I wasn't creating events. I just completely stopped existing in every way that I had ever known in my life. So that's kind of, taking things a step back and going through that type of experience, it was deeply humbling in a lot of ways. And I learned in the fire, so to say. And something that really stood out to me was that during that period of time, I was working with a large group of providers to help me on my recovery journey. And there was a person who dealt with this symptom. There was a person who dealt with that bodily system, and so on and so forth. But I kept on finding that I was getting kind of lost in the gaps between. So I see it as a very, a siloed framework of recovery. And I kept on asking myself, like, what about the human experience? What about what I'm going through? Maybe I made it to my third appointment in the day. Somehow I made it there. But there was no really space for me to say, like, but I'm actually so stressed. I'm so hungry. I haven't been able to make myself food. And I've been wearing the same shirt for 3 days because I don't have energy to find another shirt. And that's not my normal. So going through that, very long-winded, going through that type of experience and having those, types of aha moments really lit a fire under me and made me want to say, no, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to change this. I'm going to create change for people moving forward because it doesn't have to be this hard.
That's amazing. I have so many places that I want to go. Um, and being in this space, the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, she said athlete. Did you have a history of concussion, like through
So
sports or playing?
So growing up, horseback riding was my main sport. And if you know anything about riding, or if you could even guess, you do fall off. And so I did have a few concussions growing up. However, the experience for me with those concussions was very much the normal expected trajectory of healing. So the majority of concussions do resolve within a few days to a few weeks' time. And then, you're off and you're back to your life and business as normal. So that was very much my experience. It also was in a time where, I mean, a lot of antiquated beliefs around concussion existed, and they still do exist today, which I'm working to eradicate. But, then it was also very much like, oh, you're fine, you'll have a headache, and then you'll just get on with your life. And the reason that I experienced that is because, again, the ones that I had fell within that normal trajectory, and that kind of was the case. So we also know now that concussions are cumulative experience. So
Yes,
mhm.
I was going to ask how
Mhm.
many concussions prior to the car accident one.
Honestly, despite riding for many years, not that many, probably like less than a handful. Yeah.
I'm glad that it was not a lot, but also fellow equestrian. I'm glad that you brought that up. I ride as well. Haven't been able to ride as much recently, but it is definitely a passion. I've been riding since I was a little girl. So we'll have to chat about
Exciting.
that.
I know. I'm like, well, that's why we connect so well, amongst other reasons.
Right?
Yeah.
Shared passions. You both
Yes.
raising awareness about this space. So could you were talking about your symptoms and what was very difficult for you. So with you becoming a strategist, what does that look like? And I also want to get into the actual accident if you are okay with going back to that time.
Sure. So the first part that you're asking, just to make sure I'm following, is just what does it mean to be a PPCS strategist? And I'm so glad you've asked. This is a role that I have carved out for myself based upon a need that I had that was unmet when I was going through this experience. So what I'm able to do, where I'm able to shine, it is a very specific space. So I'm able to work with clients one-on-one who have PPCS and who are, going through a life derailment. They are starting to get some forward momentum in their life. Maybe they're returning to work. Maybe they're returning to some hobbies. Maybe it's a sport, and they need a little bit of extra help to boost them along the way. So very specifically, what I do is I help people to understand their mental energy and then to learn how to optimize how they're showing up every day so that they can get back to doing multiple activities in a day or even back to a specific activity that they miss. That is the first part. The second part is that, and this part is something that people are absolutely screaming for in the space in all sorts of ways, but it really is to feel truly and deeply understood and heard and seen. because concussion is an invisible injury and PPCS, can extend for years. So this is like a long-term concussion when symptoms persist longer than a few weeks to a few months. And so, it's one of the most common pieces that underpins the experience of PPCS is feeling like your struggles are invisible, because unless somebody has had various, facial or bodily injuries that could indicate to somebody outside the experience that they might be struggling, they might not have anything. In my case, there's no blood, there's no bruises, I don't have any disfigurements. I'm very fortunate that way. However, it means that there's this massive invisible piece to what I was going through. And so all this to be said, the second part of what I do is really hold a space for people to be truly understood. It's a space where I'm able to work with people through like a framework that I've developed to help them dig into self-expression. It's, I'm sure we'll get there, but that's a really big piece that becomes quite challenging when you're going through something like PPCS.
That is amazing.
Thank
Is there a space of like community, or is it one-on-one consistently? Because I can imagine that, being understood. In checking on, the wonderful things that you do, I was thinking from the therapist perspective, I'm like, that's wonderful if you can find a great therapist and a great doctor. But to have community, or to have someone who can really see you and understand and say, I have been there, and this is what helped me, or just allowing and holding that space. So does it also offer community, what you do?
you. That's a great question. And thank you for sharing that, especially from your point of view as a therapist extraordinaire with so much experience in the space. It really does, it really does help. It doesn't just help me hearing that, but it helps a lot of other people who are seeking support in different ways, just to hear that from a therapist that there are other avenues that are useful to also pursue, So I just had to say that up front. Now to your question about community, I mean, yes, like a resounding yes, absolutely, but it might not be in the way that you're asking it. So I'll just dive into this a little bit. So the element of community is so important in this space because, in my experience and with all different people that I've spoken to at this point, so many people feel like nobody understands me. I can't be seen or understood by the closest people in my life or my coworkers or society at large. They feel alone. And as we know, the sense of community can just, oh my gosh, it can just do so much for a person. So the fact that I am a lived experience expert, just holding that space for somebody alone, that is a space of community. And that's, feedback that I'm so privileged to share space with people and to receive just so many people saying like, oh wow, like I feel like you actually understand me, and just being able to fill that gap. And I do want to make a distinction as well that, the services that I provide are very much exactly as I explained them when I work directly with clients. I do not provide mental health support. I think there are incredible people in that space who can fill that need. But what I constantly hear and what I experienced is that it can be incredibly hard to find, whether it's a registered clinical counselor, a therapist, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist. It can be so hard to find somebody in one of those roles who has lived experience. And so it's not that I'm stepping in to take on the role of mental health management, as that's not my position, but I can fill that space of being the person who can hold space and who can listen and who can really have someone feel heard, because they know that their experiences will resonate with me. And that in itself makes worlds of difference.
Absolutely. Just holding space with someone who can relate,
Mhm.
that does wonders.
Mhm.
And yes, definitely a therapist who is open to really like just the whole picture. The in my field, we talk a lot about evidence based. There's also information based, and while you can have an evidence based, this is by the book, this is standardized, proven method, etc. But also the information space where it's like, no, take into consideration the entire person. So, you know, speech therapy, occupational therapy, seeing a neurologist, medical doctors. Also, let's check out music therapy. Let's check out mental health therapy. Let's check out things with movement and you dancing and just things that are going to matter to the actual person versus what, it shows in the research, which also can be very beneficial. So I very much am interested in what it is that you do and how you help people. And also, I would like our listeners to know that this is an international call. You are located in Canada, and
Yeah.
so your experience could be different than what people in the United States experience when it comes to the recovery and the care. So, if you're all right, let's go back to the actual accident. Could you talk about what happened, and then your experience with the medical system?
Yeah, I'll keep it fairly high level on this particular part. I was in a car accident and the basically a car T-boned my car on the driver's side door. And so that's essentially the how it happened. Um, did you say the next part was how my experience has been in the
with
systems?
the with
Or
the medical system.
yeah, pause to just collect my thoughts here a little bit
Take your
because
time.
I do, I appreciate you sharing that this is an international call. And I just have to interject with this piece first. It's this like, here's the thing is I often find myself saying that brain injury is not geographically limited. So, this is an international call. And of course, there will be differences in terms of medical systems and support and treatment and maybe even diagnosis. I don't know. But at the same time, brain injury is brain injury and human experience is human experience. So, there's always overlap, whether it's us speaking or, I'm very fortunate to have a network I'm building out across Canada, the US, UK, as well as Australia. And yeah, just to put that out there, like that's, to me, I'm like, yes, we're in different countries, but there are so many similarities and the type of support that people need who have a concussion and or PPCS and are trying to climb back to their life, this is very similar. So just to put that out there, I want everyone to just really sit with that.
I want to know if your system like refers you to a different type of professional, or if, because in America, a lot of times the doctor will say, yep, you're concussed and good luck to you. Not all, but that does happen more often than not than when I speak with people.
Mm.
And I want to know if in your country, if they say you need to see this person, you need a speech therapist, you need, if that's any different than what it is that people experience here.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Here's the thing is that the answer, as far as my knowledge, is that there are definite similarities in general across the world. And this is informed from my experience. It's informed from speaking to medical doctors in the space. It's, as a contact of mine as a medical doctor and researcher in the space out based out of Belgium, for example, and just people who are so far flung over the world. And what we are consistently seeing is that there are these major gaps in terms of diagnosis and treatment of concussion and PPCS. So, again, for me, this just reading about this and learning about this so consistently, it just feels like the world as a whole has so much more work to do. We are doing great work. There's, research and discussions are steadily increasing, which gives me so much hope. But at the same time, it's like on the client level, it's not fast enough. So, sort of a broad answer to what you're saying, specifically in Canada, it can vary a little bit between whether it's between provinces, between medical professionals, but there are, equally as many people who say that they, maybe their concussion was missed by a medical professional and discovered later down the road. Maybe on the other hand, it was diagnosed, but then they weren't sent anywhere. Or maybe it was diagnosed and they were sent to the most amazing concussion specialist and they've resolved because early intervention is key, right? Like it's such a varied amount of experiences in the space, but that is the crux of the matter. Like this is one of the pieces that gets me so fired up. I'm just, I'm getting my soapbox out here as I talk because there is just so much work needs to be done to create some type of streamlined process and level of understanding that will really help to just meet people where they're at. There's way too much variability right now in the space. So again, whether it's US, Canada, UK, oh my gosh, I could just list, places all over the world. There is a lot of work to be done. And this is also why, for me, I'm just so excited to be developing this incredible network of professionals who treat concussion from, as I say, complementary spaces or complementary with complementary modalities, because I strongly believe that if we all, the people who have a very similar vision of where we're taking this space, if we all come together in our complementary ways, we just have this such a strong union and such an incredible amount of resources to be able to get us there. But it requires us to align.
I say that all the time. Together,
Mhm.
we can make real change. We can make a difference. It's got to be a collaborative effort. So I love the international space. I'm in communications with people who are in New Zealand. You mentioned that you have a contact in Belgium. I really love that this network is connecting globally. So I want to get back to what it is that you do with your clients. So when would a client come to see you?
That is a great question. I like to say that I can serve a wide variety of people. However, I really do excel specifically with clients who have PPCS. So maybe this involves me kind of reminding our listeners what that is. So when you have a concussion injury, the expected healing trajectory is a few days to a few weeks. However, in approximately 30% of cases, researchers are currently saying people will go on to develop PPCS, which is persistent post-concussive symptoms. And that just means that the concussion symptoms continue to be present or potentially evolving over a very long period of time. So for me, I excel when I serve people with PPCS. The interesting thing in this space is that it is very, I wish I could just break it down and say exactly at 11 months, this is when people come to see me. But that's not the case, because someone can have PPCS at 2 months post-injury and be in a place where they are ready to work. They're ready and they're able to work with me to learn and to adjust their behaviors to suit their brain better so that they can continue their own forward momentum. But at the same time, someone could be 3 or 5 or 7 or more years into it and then find themselves in that space. So the way that I like to describe it is that if you have PPCS and you are beginning to return to certain aspects of your previous life and you need some help getting there, you're feeling like you've hit a wall, you're sitting in stuckness, you've improved in some ways, but you're still not breaking through, that is the perfect time to connect with me. So it's not, and again, maybe I'll work on this, massage this, but I'm just trying to give my most honest response. This again echoes the fact that in the space, there's so much variability. It's, and people who, what I'm finding is people who are organically reaching out to me and finding me, they are people who are saying, I have PPCS, I've been at it for X amount of time. I've started to return to some light work. But now I'm trying to work on, for example, being on my laptop for 6 hours a day instead of 3. It could be very specific like that. Or it could be someone saying, hey, I am so frustrated. I have PPCS. No one seems to understand me. I just want to move forward in some way in my life. What can we do? Or it could be someone who's like, I just need community. I just need to be heard. And maybe they're not using those words, but they're expressing it in a lot of different ways. Because this is, again, one of the most common sentiments that we see time and time again in the space at the client level.
Hey, for all of my speech therapists and other healthcare providers, let's be honest, writing SOAP notes can be time consuming and exhausting. But with Freed AI Scribe, documentation just got a whole lot easier. Here's how it works. Freed AI uses artificial intelligence to record your sessions and instantly generate accurate professional SOAP notes. That means more time to focus on your clients and less time stuck doing paperwork. Freed AI is HIPAA compliant, which made it easy to incorporate into my private practice. And it has been a game changer. It saves me time, reduces stress, and best of all, helped me finally get out of the office at a decent hour. If you're ready to simplify your documentation, use my code Dr. Kelly50 for $50 off your first month's subscription. And join me and other SLPs who've made the switch to simplify your soap notes. The link and discount code are in the show notes. Now, back to the episode. Well, I am sure that you see a variety of different kinds of symptoms that people experience. Of course, people are going to have different professions, and so each client is going to require something different. Could you pick a client or a mock scenario? Could you explain what a session with you would look like?
Sure. So just sort of like a high level of a mock scenario, if you will, would be so well, actually right now I am running an offer to have a complimentary 20-minute PPCS support call. And so right now, this is my process. So if someone finds that ad, we have, an initial, it's a very high level conversation where we can introduce ourselves, and I've asked for each person to share just one or two things very high level that they're struggling with. The point of that call is for me to be able to offer them some type of value in the form of a strategy that they can action. So it's an actionable plan or a strategy they can put into place right away. When we move on to the next step, like that is the initial call with me. That is about an hour long when clients are able to tolerate that period of time. And that is a more in-depth sort of intake call. That's where I learn a little bit more about what they're struggling with. We learn a little bit more about their lifestyle, and as well as the places that they want to go. Because absolutely, it's a very subjective space and everybody has different goals and different needs. But when I get that type of information and actually sit down to speak with someone, then together we're able to identify what are some areas that I am able to help them with, because I'm not in the business of fixing brains. I don't know that anybody really just does that. But again, I really, I want to be so clear about what they're looking for, how I can support them. And then we're able to kind of pick an avenue to go forward from.
Amazing.
And then, sorry, then I paused. I'm like, and that's the first call. And then going forward, we'll work together for a set period of time, whether it's, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, so on and so forth. I suggest meeting once a week where we come together, and we actually talk through, if perhaps I've given them an action plan, we talk through how did it go? Were there any concerns? Should we tweak something and try again this week, or are you ready for the next one? And so it's all about setting someone up to hit small wins. A big thing that I refer to in my sessions is what I call micro steps. So it's about understanding the big piece that we have, whether it's a goal or an ambition or something you'd like to just be able to do in some way. And then, my strength is being able to break it down into little micro steps, as I mentioned. And then, as I mentioned before, I am capable of serving a large variety of people. I happen to excel when serving people who self-identify as high achievers, because that is a very specific way of thinking and being. And quite often I find that it aligns with more of like what we call an A-type personality, which I see in a very good light. I have always seen myself as an A-type. I see you raising your hand. I see you. And the thing is that when I have my PPCS hat on, I can confidently say that people who, again, self-identify as a high achiever, perhaps an A-type, they process loss of ability, loss of skill, loss of freedom in a very specific way to their manner of being. And as a result, they require very specific support to help with that. Another little nugget that I'd like to share today is that, when I work with someone who thinks and thrives in that way, a lot of the work is often helping to support the person along the road of working through micro steps to get to the big piece. It's a lot of like relearning. It's relearning how to pull yourself back into a space that you feel might be minuscule and not really make a difference. But truly, we can do some win stacking, small win stacking, and building up to things. The biggest part is just learning new strategies on how to do that, if that makes sense. That's, I'm peeking under the hood of, how I operate. Yeah, hopefully that provides a little more context.
Absolutely, it does. And I totally perked up and was, yes, raising my hand. I'm like, A type, yes.
Yes.
And we A types would absolutely seek additional routes for recovery. So I think that's
Yes.
fantastic. We obviously have both worked with A-type personalities. Um, Patients who are A-type, it is very challenging because if it's not perfect, then it's a failure. And, it's this, the whole picture can, it can be very challenging to navigate that space where you have to keep being encouraging. And I'm wondering if you had the same experience, your lived experience with PPCS of just the devastation of the lack of perfection or the lack of former self that can be devastating for anybody. But me as an A type, I can only imagine. So, could you speak to your lived experience as an A type? And then I've got a follow up question.
Yes, I can. Oh, first off, just oh my God. Yes. Can I ever? I mean, I really I serve I best serve a client who is similar to myself because I know it, I've lived it, I've experienced it, I get it. And when you say, the word devastation, I was listening to you and kind of had like, like a pleasant expression on my face. And then I heard the word devastation in regards to your question, and it wiped the smile completely off my face because I can connect with that so deeply. And I still, even though it's been years, I did struggle actively for multiple years in a row. And that level of pain and devastation around loss of ability, loss of skill, loss of freedom is one that is really challenging to put into words. It's like I often refer to this as well, just that going from, what I described of my old self, my old life, my old lifestyle, going from that to the experience that I shared just at rock bottom of just constantly hitting a wall of no and I can't was like completely confronting for me. So we have on one hand, all the symptoms that I'm struggling with and all the ways that I'm in physical, emotional, psychological pain, going through loss of my lifestyle and my life as I knew it. But then it's also the other side of like that dialogue. It's that A type, it's that high achiever dialogue of I can do anything I want. I can snap my fingers and it's done. I can do it. I can learn it. I can be it. I can make it happen. And then trying to just accommodate the new information of I can't right now. And it becomes, the devastation is that it's very hard when you're having so many cognitive challenges. In my experience, I couldn't also process the A-type loss, if that makes sense. All I knew is that I was devastated. I spent very long time in my life thinking I'll never get back to certain skills. I've lost freedom. And one of the biggest things, very honestly, that I'll share is I just constantly struggled with there's no end date in sight. And if that doesn't summarize an A-type, I don't know what does, because we're goal-oriented people. We work towards goals. We work on timelines. We work within frames of thought, frames of thinking, right? Frameworks themselves. And so like that, I just agonized over. There's no end date in sight. And I would just constantly, I spent the first 2 years post-injury, constantly at almost every single appointment that I had, and I had a lot, saying like, do you know how long it'll be till this is done? Do you know what my time frame is? Do we have a time frame yet? Can someone give me a time frame? Okay, you can't. Who can give me a time frame? And I was doing that, and I also just want to say that, you know, I exhausted myself and probably others around me by just driving at that point so hard. But that was one of the biggest things that I just could not cope with. So taking from that, it's like everyone's experience is different and the way they think and process, but there are definitely some through lines in the A-line, in the A-type experience and the high achiever experience of hitting loss specifically around concussion and PPCS.
Yes, loss, as you were talking about that. I mean, that question is something I hope that the listeners consider is no end in sight. And
Mhm.
with A type, there is a sense of control that you get when it's like, okay, if it's going to end in 3 months, then I can plan it out. I can, develop whatever I'm going to need, systems, get whatever in place and organize. But when you were saying like you couldn't get an answer and you could ask the question, but as you were saying it, I was just like loss, 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 because I'm like that loss of control, that loss of, well, how do I develop a plan if I don't know X, Y, and Z? So that actually started to make my heart beat a little fast.
Yeah. I mean, and thank you for your empathy. Like that's exactly it. Is that's something that, looking again in the moment, especially the first year and a half to 2 years, I didn't have the cognitive wherewithal to really be doing much of these concepts. I was just in survival mode. I was, focusing on boiling water and frying an egg at the same time to have lunch. That was my focus instead of these bigger concepts, to be very honest. However, when I was in a different space and I was able to look back, that's what I saw is I'm like, it's a total loss of control over your own life. It's been at the time it was horrific and there's no other way to say that. But now I just feel like and I mean this with the most genuine intention, that it feels like such a gift to have gone through something like that so that I can take from that and help others. Like I understand that mindset. And no, I don't have a magic wand. I can't just fix things or give you an end date, but I can sure as heck help you through it in the best way possible, in my opinion, which is breaking down into micro steps and just the relearning process that gets you from I'm going to do everything by tomorrow to, okay, today I focus on this. Like there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of emotional strife involved in there. And I have some processes that are helpful and supportive as I work with someone to go through that, to be able to just help them find that space because it'll look different for everyone. It's not an exact science. We don't all feel the same way about everything. But that loss of control is definitely a big piece. And it shows up for different people in different ways. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yes, and I can imagine that you having your lived experience and being an expert in this space, that just that understanding of, yes, I understand what it's like to lose that control and kind of maybe not be able to say, this is, when it will end, but to have a partner or someone that you can actually communicate with to hold their hand and let them know. I think that really is priceless. And just to have someone with you who has had that experience can really make a difference, because I'm sure that as you went through this experience, you would have liked to have had that experience of
Mhm.
someone to be a strategist.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's just there are certain roles, recovery providers that can come close to either sides, but I didn't know anyone who had direct lived experience who was able to hold that type of space for me. And the one of the, I was going to say the coolest, like what a weird word to come up right now, but yeah, one of the exciting things for me is that yes, I'm able and I love serving people directly, serving clients directly, but also I'm able to take this from this base of knowledge and lived experience and offer it to clinics and to educational institutions as well. And I'm rolling out various workshops right now, which is very exciting, where I come in and provide, I have different topics that I work with the clinical director on. And then I'm able to come in, provide a workshop that is meant to help their staff upskill and to learn more about the lived experience, as well as how to best serve the concussed population and lots of other topics. Recently, I've been in touch with a couple different educational institutions, which is very exciting to me as well. Something I hadn't thought of initially, very honestly, when I think of like specifically age. But there is so much need for people to be able to just understand PPCS and concussion in a bit of a different light and to feel seen and to receive strategies that really can help them each day.
So in my field, we, focus on return to learn, return to work, return to play. Um, and so the way that we do that is we, well, the way I do it is depending upon where the person is, it could be we're going to completely pull back on everything to allow you time to rest. And then we're going to reintroduce things a little bit at a time to see what you can handle. And then we'll build from there and modify as needed. And so it sounds like you do a very much kind of like return to life, where it just is all encompassing, whatever that may mean. So could you speak to what your process was for reintroducing bits and pieces of your life?
Yeah, so that is exactly why my business is called Return to Life. That is exactly why. You you hit it on the head. You did it for me, and I love this. That's exactly it, is that it's, because there are all these, there are incredible therapists out there like yourself and others who serve in, again, these amazing complementary ways where you are addressing the return to school, the return to learn, the return to sport, the return to, different areas. But in my experience, I was like, but what about return to life? And, there's a lot of money and funding and resources that I believe go towards return to sport, for example. But what about the everyday person who is in a car accident, who had a slip and fall, who had a concussion in a different way, and they just need to get back to their lifestyle? So I just needed to put that in there. That is exactly why my business is called Return to Life. And
Make
now
sure
I've
you
lost
look it up, listeners.
please, returntolife.ca is where you can find it and learn more. Now, what was the question I was answering for you? Is my next question.
You were it's okay. I was asking for you to share about your return to life, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. My gosh, what a question. This is a meaty one. My return to life happened gradually, also over a period of time. What I know now, I really wish I knew then, which is something, I guess I could say forever. Doesn't change the fact that I didn't know it then. Um, But I now realize that there were certain steps and potentially providers that I probably should have been sent to that could have really supported me at that time, potentially could have shortened my excuse me, my experience with PBCS. It could have allowed me to have the right type of support that would allow me to get back to certain parts of my life. Um, so I identify now, I won't go into them directly, but there were definitely areas that were missed in terms of my recovery. So when I say, it was gradual, it was over a period of time. Yeah, okay. When I say it was gradual and it was over a period of time, I mean, there are so many contributing factors behind that. Just like in anyone else's case, there's always personal factors at play. There's, what type of intervention are you receiving? We all know well, a lot of us know in the space that early intervention is key. But, I just recently on LinkedIn was having this comment conversation with a few other professionals, which was so invigorating because there was an article posted on in early intervention being key and just the reasons. And then we broke it down scientifically and, why certain types of intervention are important for people with a concussion to pursue early on, soon after their injury. And I said, yes, absolutely, I agree. But here's the thing. I just want to asterisk this because it's essential that people find the right type of early intervention, the right type of support, because all too often we see people who have perhaps been sent to a type of provider that isn't specialized in concussion or a type of provider that doesn't really dig into what's needed or perhaps possess that knowledge if they're not specialized in the area, or perhaps someone's just not referred out. So all this to say, my return to life was gradual. I did have, again, a lot of different professionals that I worked with on recovery. So there was that. There's the passage of time itself, which, as we know, it does have an effect. It does do wonders overall. It can do wonders, I should say. And a really, really big part for me is that I took myself on a personal growth journey. And it took me years to even get to a place where that was something that I could focus on outside of my very basic skills and practicing and showing up in basic ways again. But this personal growth journey, I was able to really, it was very intense. It was a few years into my experience. It was very intense. I did a full 1 year personal growth journey. This is on top of appointments. This is on top of me struggling every single day still. This is on top of me feeling like my struggles were invisible. It was on top of a lot, but it was very much important for me in my experience to be able to look at what I had gone through, where I wanted to go, identify the gaps. And then I went down this whole rabbit hole, which I don't necessarily suggest for someone who is in a more survival space. I don't necessarily suggest for everyone to do it the level that I did, but I then started to identify, patterns and previous trauma. And then it really became much more than just a personal growth journey around concussion and PPCS. It became, learning to go from learning to really, really live. This has happened for me. Things are happening for me. They're not happening to me. And along those lines, just so many other shifts, like massive shifts in mindset and thinking. And I want to be clear that I'm not sitting here saying that if you have a concussion or PPCS, you just have to think yourself out of it. That is not what I'm reducing this down to. I just want to like flag and say that this is an additional avenue that can be so fruitful and so incredibly helpful and supportive while you pursue your recovery journey. So that's a huge part of mine. And I practice this every single day with myself. And I'm constantly challenging myself to shift my mindset, to shift my mentality. I mean, even to go from, a place of so much like complete and total life derailment. There's no other way to say it. But then get to the point where I'm like, oh, yeah, I've actually taken from this experience. I've computed, I've created frameworks, and I've done research, and I've pursued education, and like I've used my live experience first and foremost to create a business. Like that involves some serious mindset shifting. And that's something that, when I work with someone one-to-one, or when I give workshops to clinics, or however I'm showing up to serve, I am more than happy to talk through that as well, like just mindset shifting and how to do that. And yeah, so that's in a weird little nutshell, my journey, which encompasses, like, it sounds like just the high level. There's obviously all the struggle that was underlying it the whole time and the pain. It's been a mixed bag.
Wow, I absolutely love the changing the mindset. I love reframing. I love looking at something with a different lens, and that whole "this has happened for me" is, I love that, and I hope listeners will take that and start applying that, because it can really reframe something that is initially can be seen as like doom and gloom and, like we said, devastation, um and change it, because yes, now you have done something and started a business, created an opportunity to help others in such a fantastic way. So to some degree, it was something that was done for you, but also so that you can do things for other people, which is amazing.
Thank you. Yes, everything is happening for me. That is it. Not everything is happening to me. There is a certain point in time where someone will be ready to start interacting with that type of material, and you'll kind of just know it when you're there, because it will hit and it'll be like a bit of curiosity in your mind. You're like, oh, but what if I thought that way? What if I said that?
I have a quick question for all of my fellow speech language pathologists. Are you on the hunt for fun, functional, and diverse therapy materials for both your pediatric and adult clients? Well, let me put you on to something I absolutely love and use in my private practice: Cognishine. If you haven't heard of it yet, Cognishine is a digital platform designed to support speech, language, memory, attention, executive function, and more. It's science backed, clinically effective, and works beautifully for both teletherapy and in person sessions. But what really makes Cognishine shine? It's completely customizable. You can tailor exercises to your client's specific needs, whether you're targeting speech sounds, supporting recovery after a concussion, or strengthening cognitive skills post stroke. It's become a game changer in my sessions, and my clients absolutely love it. So, if you're looking for a tool to elevate your therapy, check out Cognishine and tell them Dr. Kelly sent you. Absolutely. So through your journey, I'm wondering, maybe a little biased, obviously, did you work with a speech therapist?
I did not. That is an area that, my tone of voice right now sounds entertained, because in that moment I felt entertained. We're interacting. I see you, right? But truly, I will be very honest, this is one of the pieces that I didn't reference a few moments ago, but was missing in my care. And I am just going to chalk things up to, there is so much room for improvement in terms of diagnosis and treatment of concussion, literally worldwide. That was missing. I didn't even know what an SLP was, a speech language pathologist. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what they would do. I didn't know how helpful that could have been for me. I had so many struggles with language. I was like recycling the same few words every day. I had word finding issues, couldn't follow conversations. I was not like it just, I could go on. I won't. But all this to say that once I finally, it was a few years in, discovered, oh my gosh, I'm like, that would have made such a massive difference for me. And so I take that with me and, casually in casual conversation, I might say like, oh, are you seeing an SLP? Or, have you considered that? Because I can't refer, that's not my role, but I can definitely put it in front of people and for someone to look into for themselves.
You absolutely can recommend, though.
Yeah. Recommend looking into it to see if there
Yes,
is alignment or if a need, exists. I
absolutely.
definitely educate, like just bringing educational material in front, putting it in front of people is so important. So,
But I think, even just advocacy work, because when you do your workshops and the wonderful spaces that you are entering, just saying, because a lot of people, which is, the point of my nonprofit, Brain Talk Foundation, is to really get speech therapists to be a part of these conversations, because a lot of times people can get the concussion or traumatic brain injury diagnosis, and speech therapy will not be a part of that conversation for the recovery team. And while language and the word finding, a lot of times people will say, like, it's on the tip of my tongue and I just can't get it. We absolutely can help with that. But the cognitive piece as well, with sequencing and problem solving, things with safety. I've worked with patients who babysit or are around, their nieces and nephews. And when we go through exercises, I can show a picture of something that's not safe, of, a child who could be cutting an apple with a butcher knife and, their fingers are in the way. And the patient can say, yep, that's fine. But it's like
well,
the
yeah.
exercise has to be done for that, but that's something speech therapists do. And so you advocating and saying speech
Hmm.
therapy should be a part, or at least, get screened or evaluated to make sure that it's warranted. But that is a huge piece as well, just putting the awareness out there.
Yes, and it's, Kelly, it's no coincidence that I found you and that I found you on LinkedIn. I saw all that you do. I was so impressed, so blown away, so excited to connect with you further, genuinely, because the way that you serve and the level of understanding that you possess, and the fact that you do work with, you have very specific vested interest in the concussed population. All these are just like ticking these boxes for me. And that's exactly it. I have I am just blown away by all that SLPs can do. And yeah, I wish it was in my experience, but what I can do now is make sure that other people do know about them. And I'm telling you, I do bring up SLP. It's just, the examples you described, I just think back and I did so many different types of therapies with like looking at pictures and trying to name things or match things. And I had such trouble doing that. So here is to making it easier for other people, which is one of the biggest pieces for me. And my overarching goal is to change the conversation being had around PBCS. Hard stop. That's what I'm driving at, amongst other things. SLPs can help us get there.
Yes, absolutely. And I also think that it would be great for SLPs to know about what it is that you do for potential referrals, to be a part of your business. Because, like I said, you can have a great therapist, you can have a great doctor, a great um, mental health therapist, but to have someone with lived experience and that level of expertise that can offer community, whether one-on-one or introducing to, giving an avenue to, here's a support group where, you can find additional community. I think that that is amazing and a possibility. And so please let people know how they can find you, through your website, on social media, LinkedIn. Please share.
Thank you for that. That's exactly it. It's funny you say that. I'm actively building out a clinical partnership program. And this is to be, to serve so many different professionals, SLPs being one of them. There are so many. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your recommendation. You can find me at my website, which is returntolife.ca. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Chaandani Khan, first and last name, which will be written in the show notes. On Instagram, I am at CHAAN, followed by my last name, KHAN. Hopefully that's in the show notes. If not, just try to squish my first and last name together. But on a serious note, I do encourage you to find me, to follow, to reach out if you're looking for some type of help, even if you don't know what it is. If you have concussion in your life and or PPCS and you're feeling like you're in a place of being stuck or being frustrated or just not knowing what's really going on, feel free to reach out. Let's have a conversation. I'm really passionate about helping people to understand what's going on for them and to find ways to continue building into their own forward momentum.
Absolutely. And you are, it's your first and last name on LinkedIn as well, correct?
It is
Okay.
Chaandani Khan on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. So please find her, connect with her. Like I say, we can do this together, make real change together, and that includes interprofessional collaboration. So we have a new profession or professional that is entering the space. And so please make sure that you connect with her, refer your clients, your patients. How does that work with the international space? Is that not an issue with like insurance or private pay, or how does that work?
Yeah, so admittedly, there are lots of different ways of doing that. There are things to be considered, of course. I just recommend if you are a professional or a provider, please reach out to me, send me an email directly, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you based upon that and to find how we can work together in the best way.
Perfect. Well, you there you have it, folks. Reach out regardless. We need to include all different kinds of interprofessionals into these spaces because the focus is the client, the patient, and making sure that they have everything that they need. Okay, this is the part of the podcast where I like to get into the candid questionnaire. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions that just let our audience get to know you a little bit better.
I'm ready
So,
for it.
okay. First question. What's one word your friends would use to describe you?
Compassionate.
I could agree, just your energy and
Thank
the
you.
work that you go into. Okay, number 2, if you could instantly master any sport or physical skill, what would it be and why?
Ooh, honestly, I started playing volleyball 2 years ago from zero. And so if I could just wake up tomorrow and be at a very high level, that's what I would do.
Volleyball, okay. It just hurts. Like when I would play in high school, like just the smacking of the ball on my
Yeah.
forearms, that's
You kind of have
quite
to build
painful.
that up. You build it up and then you just don't feel it.
Yes, that's what I've heard, but I'm such a, I break a nail, I'm like, "Deep it down."
How do you deal with horses is the question, but I digress.
I know. And those first couple rides where like I haven't ridden in a while and like how your entire body is sore, it's like, man, you are really
Yes,
working every part.
head to toe, you really are.
Yeah. But then it's like I love the feeling and you want to get back on the horse, but
When it's in your blood, it's in your blood, as they say. Horses are in your blood.
yes. And listeners, not everybody can relate, but the smell of the stable.
It's so welcoming and warm. And it is so welcoming. There's no other way to put it. It just feels inviting, feels like I'm supposed to be here.
I was gonna say like it smells like home.
Yes, exactly. I have over the years, I've brought various friends with me to like a barn or something, and they are just so truly disgusted by the smell. And I'm like, really?
And my
This is
eyes are big like, what? I love
yeah,
it.
I
When I
know.
when I get to a stable, I'm like, like just
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're making me miss. I haven't been around horses for quite a period of time now. Not for a particular reason, I just haven't. Now you're making me miss that smell and that welcoming feeling.
I know. And then just the touch of the nose. Oh, okay.
Ugh. All of
We're both gonna be riding before we know it.
it.
Okay. What's one activity or hobby you find most relaxing or beneficial for your brain?
Mm. You know what? It kind of depends on where I'm at. And like when I think about relaxing, there's a difference between like sleeping, resting, and active rest. So I think it's really just trying to decide like which category am I going for right now? And if I
Whichever
think
one you
about,
want.
yeah, if I think about Yeah, active rest, it can come in many different forms. And if I think about, one thing that I just really love and really lights me up, and I just feel very connected with myself is when I dabble in photography. So I love capturing patterns and shapes that exist like in cityscapes or outdoors, nature, anywhere. And so when I engage in that, I just kind of shut myself off and I just get into it.
I like that. That you are the
Mhm.
second person, maybe third, who has described like getting like using their creative brain as a way to just kind of
Mhm.
decompress and relax.
Yes, and that's very much me now. But me, when I was struggling the most with concussion PPCS, that is way too much work for a brain that's struggling. Just to like that's why I had the differentiation up front of
Okay.
what
What
space and
was what was
Mhm.
relaxing during that time then?
Well, that is a whole can of worms here that I'm going to try to summarize in a sentence. Um, I honestly used to find it extraordinarily challenging because reading a book was hard work for my brain. Watching a show or being on a screen was near impossible for a very long time. Just like relaxing on a couch, I would end up sleeping. So it's a can of worms. It's a challenging type of thing. There are suggestions that work for different people, pending what their brain is working through. But it was really important for me to learn and to carry forward for other people now that things that your old self might have found relaxing when you are working through concussion or PPCS may not be relaxing because your brain is just operating in a bit of a different way. So it's just about learning how to meet it where it's at.
Ah, that's just, making the lights flash in my speech therapy brain, and any other speech
Mhm.
therapist who's listening who works in this space, they'll probably be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that would have been a thing for us to work on." The reading,
Yes,
the screen
please.
time, and the fatigue and all of that. I totally,
Mhm.
totally have patients who experience just that and will
Mhm.
say like, I haven't done much today. And then they list off an entire thing that is absolutely cognitively draining. And they're like, but I don't know why I'm so tired. And it's like, let's start from the beginning. This is
Mhm.
not a day where you can say I didn't do much because you did.
Yes. Yeah, it's that re-education piece it's underpins what you do, it underpins what I do. It's just if you don't work on the space, you don't know these things. You just don't know what you don't know. So
And then when
let
you
that
actually do get to rest, you realize, oh, like, wow, like I have energy. I'm not drained. And yes.
Mhm. Or you can
Oh,
just prioritize it a little bit better, at least, at the very least.
yeah, absolutely. What's one activity? Nope, we just did that one. What's the weirdest or most unexpected item in your bag or car right now?
Oh, the weirdest and most unexpected item. Oh my gosh. I have to give this a think because I'm a person I enjoy oddities and strange things, but now I need to think. I'm like, well, is there anything I'm carting around with me? I am going to pivot this question because there's nothing odd that I'm carrying around with me, but I will say how about one of the like oddest or weirdest things that I own is like, it's like, judge me as you will.
No
It's
judgment
just,
zone here.
I, I saw it online years ago and was like, oh my God, this is so weird. I have to have it. I just have to have this. And it's just like a keychain that has like a replica chicken nugget on it, but it looks so real. Like it looks so real that if it was on a plate, someone might just pick it up. So I own that. I don't use it. I just like have it like it's a prized possession. It's like sitting in a drawer somewhere.
Well, the A type in me has questions. What's the texture of it like?
It's very chicken nugget like. It's very bumpy and it feels like I had to smell it. I was like, is no, it smells like rubber. But
But
I'm
is
like,
it like hard? Is it fuzzy?
It's not fuzzy, definitely not fuzzy. It is hard. It has ridges. If you think about like a chicken nugget that has some like not a smooth one. And I can't believe I just shared that publicly. Just some of my like close friends know this and they're like, this is so weird. And I say, yes, it is, but I like it. I
The
do
carrot
nothing with it.
nugget.
I just like that I know that I have it. That's all.
Sometimes you just need those little mental nuggets, no pun intended.
Yeah, right.
Last question. What's your go-to guilty pleasure TV show, movie, or song?
Hmm. Well, giving this a quick think.
Take your time.
Um, I don't know if it's like I don't feel guilty about it, so I don't know that it's a guilty pleasure.
Well, you can
But
just share it then. It doesn't
song
have to be guilty.
like like song-wise, I will go to like the 2000s hits and just sing along to like we're talking like Backstreet Boys. Like I think back to when I was in school, like in elementary school, when I was running track in elementary school, and I just like go back to like Backstreet Boys being so big when I was like, I don't know, grade 5, 6-ish. Yeah, and so like I'll do that. I'll listen to that now and do a little pick me up, and I just don't feel guilty. I just enjoy myself and I belt the song out, and that's that.
Oh my gosh. Samesies. I love 2000s music and I ran track.
Oh, but look at us finding each other at last.
I know. Oh my goodness. International sister.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So, is there anything that you have coming up that you would like to let the listeners be aware of, that we should be in the know about?
Thank you. It's funny, I have to kind of transition from talking about my chicken nugget keychain and Backstreet Boys to being like, yeah, the business hat is going back on. So, little transitional period. Yes, I do. So right now I am running ads specifically for my one-to-one support call package. That's where, like I described when we chatted about just this past hour, where I work with people who have PPCS and help them understand their mental energy, help provide a space for them to feel truly heard and seen, and to find strategies to help continue moving forward. So I'm currently running that. Workshops as well. I'm actively booking with clinics. These are concussion clinics. These are general rehab clinics, very open to anything that doesn't fall into those categories. And also, if you are an educational institution and you're interested in having someone come in and speak to either your grades or a certain class, I would love to talk with you about how I can come, offer some education in a very accessible, easy to follow way. And if you are a specialist in the space and you're interested in the clinical partnership program that I'm actively growing, I would also love to hear from you. Those are the three things that I am focused on right now and I'm actively building out. The final piece is that I just welcome connection, um, connection with professionals in the space and beyond.
Excellent. Well, I am glad that we are connected and that we'll be able to help each other. I absolutely will be glad to refer because the whole patient, the whole picture, that is what's most important. And I am all for anything that can be beneficial in the space. It can be very lonely. Like you said, it's an invisible injury. And, with societal norms, if you don't have a visual cue, a cast, a cane, a crutch, something that says that there's something that's going on, a lot of times you don't get the same patience or the same grace that others with those visual cues do. So I very much am grateful that you have shifted the mindset of what happened to you to what happened for you and how you are giving back to the community overall. And I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you so much for having me on. I also appreciate how you lead this space, and I love talking to you today.
Likewise. Well, we will continue to talk and we will talk again soon.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Candid Conversations with Dr. Kelly. I appreciate you being part of this journey and these powerful conversations around brain health and beyond. If you're loving the podcast and want even more bonus episodes, exclusive Q&As, stories from my professional and personal life, behind the scenes moments, and yes, those bloopers you all love, then I invite you to join my Patreon family, where we always keep it candid. Your membership gives you access to all that bonus content and helps keep this podcast going strong. Plus, every contribution helps support our mission to raise awareness, educate, and empower others about the silent struggles so many face. So head on over to patreon.com/Dr. Kelly to join today. I'd love to have you. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and as always, keep it candid.